Angel Reese had a rough return to Chicago, and social media wasted no time piling on. Think about the storyline for a second. After parting ways with the Chicago Sky and spending the offseason talking up her new beginning with the Atlanta Dream, Reese finally faced her former team for the first time. But instead of a revenge game moment, the night turned into a disaster. She struggled badly from the floor, shooting just 20, and the moment everyone is talking about came when former teammate Camila Cardoso sent her layup attempt flying with a brutal block that instantly exploded across the internet. Within minutes, clips of the play were everywhere, and fans were already turning it into memes. Then things got even more awkward. Reports started circulating that Reese was barely seen around the media area before tip-off, almost like she knew this matchup was about to become a nightmare. Meanwhile, Chicago looked energized, confident, and completely in control. A lot of fans online are now saying the Sky clearly came out on top after all the offseason drama, while Reese's fresh start in Atlanta suddenly doesn't look nearly as convincing as people expected. Earlier in the year, Reese made comments suggesting players didn't want to be in Chicago anymore. But after this performance, critics online flipped the narrative fast, arguing the real issue might have been playing alongside Reese herself. Now the pressure is building. One bad game won't define a season, but when the spotlight is this big, every performance gets magnified. So what do you think? Is Angel Reese just going through an early adjustment period in Atlanta? Or is this the beginning of a much bigger problem for the Dream? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Angel Reese spent the entire offseason selling the idea of a brand new chapter in Atlanta, and from the moment the schedule dropped, one date immediately stood out: April 29th in Chicago. Because if you really want to prove your former team made a mistake by moving on from you, that's the stage. Back in front of the same crowd, against the same franchise, on the same court where everything started. That's supposed to be your statement game. The hype leading into it was massive. Reese talked for months about evolving her game, improving her outside shot, adding more versatility, becoming a more complete player offensively. Meanwhile, Dream fans were already acting like Atlanta was ready to take over the league while Chicago was headed for disaster. The narrative was simple. The Dream were becoming contenders, and the Sky were eventually going to regret letting Angel Reese go. That was the expectation heading into the matchup.
Can't believe this is my life. Like I said earlier, the paint is wide open. Like, I can drive. I had a lot of success last year, ISOs. So just being able to come down until somebody stops me. I mean, everybody's on leash and on ride, staying with JC. So it opens up the floor, but also it makes the job easier for me where I don't have to always take the shot. Like, I can come and do inverted screens where they screen for me and they pop and I can kick it to them too. So just being able to have great players, I mean, it makes everybody's life easier.
Then the game tipped off, and everything changed fast. Angel Reese finished the night shooting just 29% from the field, and social media immediately exploded over it. And to really understand how rough that performance was, you have to break the number down. This wasn't just a case of a few unlucky bounces or shots barely rolling out. She missed more than 2/3 of her attempts. That becomes a major problem when your game is centered around toughness, rebounding, and scoring near the basket. Reese isn't known for stretching the floor with consistent three-point shooting, and she's not operating as a primary pick and role creator either. So when the finishing around the rim starts falling apart, there's not much else offensively to balance things out. Once that inside efficiency disappeared, the entire performance started to unravel.
Angel Reese, preseason basketball, we're back, baby. 3-ball, you want some? Come get some. Bang! I heard she got traded for a used jockstrap and a dirty diaper. New team, same layup package. Bang! How about them eyeballs? You know what they say? Free throws ain't free. How about it? Bang! They say second time's a charm. Bang! No, it's not. How about the third time? Bang! Fine, the fourth one will go in. Flick that wrist, spin that ball. Wiggity, wiggity, bang!
She only saw the floor for about 13 minutes. Now, the Dream can call it rotation management, minute restrictions, or whatever label they want to use to make it sound planned out. But when a player shoots 29% and barely stays on the court, people are going to draw their own conclusions. That doesn't look like someone controlling the game. It looks like someone who struggled to make an impact and got pulled out of the action. And this is where the entire revenge game storyline really started to collapse. Chicago wasn't even at full strength. The Sky were without key players like Skylar Diggins, Smith DeJohnny Carrington, and Azura Stevens. Yet Reese still couldn't find any rhythm offensively against a short-handed roster. Meanwhile, Sky head coach Tyler Marsh approached the game more like a chance to test lineups and evaluate younger talent than some emotional battle. For Chicago, this felt like experimentation. For Reese, it felt like a statement opportunity. And by the end of the night, the statement never came.
Look, it's over when people were like, oh, she's not a third or fourth option in this team. Yes, she is. Ryan Howard and Alicia Gray are the first two options in this team. Like, it is what it is. They are the first two options in this team, whether Angel Reese fans like it or not. And then when Bree Jones comes back, Bree Jones is the third.
Most of what Atlanta did well that night came through Ryan Howard and Alicia Gray, who carried the offense and kept the Dream competitive. Angel Reese's impact, meanwhile, felt far less significant, even when Dream head coach Carl Smesko tried to defend her performance by saying her presence was felt on nearly every possession. Fans weren't buying it, especially after she finished just 2 for 7 from the field. That's the kind of post-game quote coaches give to protect confidence, but it didn't change what people were watching on the court. By the middle of the game, social media was already flooded with clips of her missed shots, and critics were piling on fast. One viral comment summed up the mood brutally. She hasn't improved her game at all. But there was one moment that completely defined the night. Imagine leaving Chicago, hyping up your fresh start for months, then returning for your big revenge matchup only to have your layup rejected by Camila Cardoso, the same young center Chicago is building its future around, right in front of the fans who used to support you. That wasn't just a rough possession, that became the image of the entire game.
We've got the Atlanta Dream against the Chicago Sky. Angel Reese against her former teammates that she held their heads underwater and drowned them publicly to the media. And by the way, she's now blaming the media for what she said about her teammates.
Camila Cardoso's block on Angel Reese went viral almost instantly, and it wasn't just because it was a great defensive play. It was the kind of moment that instantly became symbolic. Cardoso represents the future Chicago decided to build around after moving on from Reese. So when she sent that layup attempt flying, it felt like the entire storyline between those two players played out in a single possession. The crowd reacted immediately, and within minutes the clip was everywhere across WNBA social media. Fans online didn't hold back either. Some mocked Reese's finishing ability, while others criticized parts of her offensive mechanics that they believe still haven't improved. The reactions were harsh, but they reflected a bigger conversation that's followed Reese throughout her career. Whether her offensive game is evolving fast enough to match the hype surrounding her name. And that's why the Camila Cardoso block hit so much harder than an ordinary rejection at the rim. For Angel Reese, finishing inside isn't just one element of her offensive game, it's the foundation of almost everything she does. She's not known for consistent three-point shooting, and she isn't creating offense as a primary ball handler in pick and roll situations. So when the shots around the basket stop falling, there isn't another layer of offense there to stabilize the performance. And unfortunately for Reese, the blocked layup wasn't an isolated moment. Throughout her 13 minutes on the floor, she missed several close range attempts, and with her shooting numbers already struggling at 2 for 7, every missed finish quickly became social media material. Before the game had even ended, fans were already posting lowlight compilations across multiple platforms. One comment that gained traction summed up the criticism bluntly: "She hasn't improved her offensive game. Fair or unfair, that's a brutal narrative to deal with, especially in a matchup that was supposed to be your statement performance against your former team."
Oh yeah, favorite possession right here. Jam! Nah, not ready. Hands a little slippery. Had too much popcorn with butter. Butter pecan!
How many times I gotta tell you, only 3 things in life are certain:
death, taxes, and Angel Reese smoking layups, baby. Give me all that. Burn!
Some of Reese's supporters argued that the missed layups were the result of tough defensive pressure or Atlanta still adjusting to a new system, but that explanation didn't fully land with fans, especially considering Chicago wasn't even at full strength. Both Dijanai Carrington and Azra Stevens were unavailable, meaning the Sky weren't throwing their top defensive lineup at her. Even against a shortened rotation, Reese still struggled to find consistency around the basket. A lot of Dream fans shifted the focus to the final score. And yes, Atlanta got the win. But most of the credit belonged to Rhyne Howard, whose performance clearly drove the outcome far more than Reese's did. That's why pointing to the scoreboard after shooting 29% didn't really silence the criticism online. And in the end, the Camila Cardoso block became the defining image of the entire game because it captured the storyline perfectly without anyone needing to explain it. The player Chicago chose to build around stopped the player they decided to move on from right in front of a packed United Center crowd that understood exactly what that moment meant.
And she has made comments about playing against Chicago and heading back to Chicago. Angel Reese claims there is no bad blood. Well, she's the ones that said the bad things. Ask the teammates, the former teammates, if there's any bad blood. Angel's the one that ran her mouth.
Angel Reese was already at the center of attention before the game even tipped off, and not because of anything she did on the court. Heading into the matchup, she skipped the pregame media availability. And considering she's previously joked about getting fined for avoiding reporters, the timing of that decision immediately raised eyebrows. Reese has been pretty open about her feelings toward the media. She's admitted that she'd rather accept a fine than sit through interviews, saying the narratives often get twisted no matter how she answers. She's also explained that she finds media sessions stressful because even harmless questions can end up being misrepresented later. That's her perspective, and she's entitled to it. But in a game like this, your first meeting against the team that traded you away, that kind of absence doesn't necessarily come off as confidence or composure. To many watching, it looked less like being unbothered and more like someone quietly bracing for a night they already expected wouldn't go their way.
Of course, she made these comments on a podcast with a Michelle Obama. Big Mike himself. Oh, Lord. The two-time All-Star is determined to not repeat her past mistakes in Atlanta, even if it means fines from the league's office.
That pregame media session would have been the perfect opportunity to set the tone. A simple message about being locked in, excited to compete, maybe even a respectful nod toward Chicago's rebuild. Nothing complicated. Instead, reporters showed up to find an empty seat where Angel Reese was supposed to be. And just like that, the storyline took shape before the game even began. Because you don't really control the narrative by avoiding it. You just leave a vacuum for everyone else to fill in. And this wasn't an isolated moment either. Throughout her time in Chicago, there had already been ongoing tension around media interactions, locker room dynamics, and public comments that occasionally sparked criticism or debate. So this absence didn't feel random. It fit into a pattern that people had already started noticing. When things get uncomfortable, Reese tends to step away from the conversation. But the conversation doesn't stop. It just continues without her perspective in the mix.
Can't rely on Courtney to come back at that age that she's at, Reese said. I know she'll be a great asset for us, but we can't rely on that. We need someone probably a little younger with some experience, somebody who's been playing the game and is willing to compete for a championship and has done it before. Courtney Vandersloot, by the way, two-time WNBA champion, 5-time All-Star, 2-time All-WNBA first team, left the New York Liberty, a championship caliber team, to come help out the Chicago. Oh, damn. Oh, damn. Oh, damn. Oh, damn. It's all right.
the WNBA has been making a real push for stronger media access because at the end of the day, the league's growth depends on players being able to connect with casual fans through personality, not just highlights. And in that space, Caitlin Clark has become the clearest example of consistency. She shows up for every interview, win or lose, great performance or rough night. No exceptions. That routine has played a major role in why Indiana's fan base keeps expanding so quickly. Meanwhile, Angel Reese's public image continues to cycle through the same pattern of controversy, criticism, and pushback. Clark, on the other hand, doesn't avoid the podium after a bad shooting performance. She sits down, answers what she's asked, and moves forward without turning it into a storyline of its own. So after a night like this, where Reese shot just 29% and the Camila Cardoso block was already circulating everywhere online, the post-game questions were always going to be sharp. At that point, anything said or not said in that media room was going to become part of the coverage anyway, because the game footage had already done most of the talking.
Reese's contributions are all about making Reese look better on the stat sheet, not making her teammates better. Having 2 first-round draft picks for the next 2 years, however, a franchise can go ahead and create a formidable starting squad if you play your cards right. But even more of a benefit is the fact that, according to some reports, Sky players are thrilled that Reese is gone, making it pretty obvious she was viewed as a locker room cancer.
Avoiding reporters right before a game, and then coming out and shooting just 29% doesn't really come off as confidence. If anything, it reads like someone who anticipated a difficult night and chose not to put anything on record beforehand. And once the game played out, the numbers basically back that up now. Zoom out and look at what happened with the Chicago Sky. The moment Angel Reese was moved on from, the pace of their roster overhaul said a lot about the situation that existed before it. During her time in Chicago, the broader narrative around the franchise had started to shift in a negative direction. A perception that free agents weren't exactly eager to join, and that the team was struggling to build momentum. The results on the court reflected that too. 2 seasons without a playoff appearance, and instead of improving, the record actually slipped in year 2. Reports around that period also pointed to a tense locker room environment, and an overall sense that the situation wasn't stable. So, when Chicago eventually traded Reese to Atlanta in exchange for future draft assets, it marked a clear reset. But what happened next changed the conversation quickly. Almost immediately after that move, the Sky started bringing in proven talent. Skylar Diggins-Smith joined the roster, so did Dejanai Carrington and Azura Stevens. On top of that, they acquired Ricka Jackson, who went on to earn all-star recognition. Diggins-Smith brings veteran leadership and deep playoff experience. Carrington is widely regarded as one of the league's top perimeter defenders. Suddenly, this wasn't a team defined by uncertainty anymore. It looked like a roster built with direction, structure, and competitive intent.
You know, the dynasty starts after you, not with you. Chicago Sky to Angel Reese. Woo-wee! I told you that AR disease ran deep. Nobody wanted to play with that. That is why.
People close to the organization didn't exactly hide how quickly the atmosphere changed after the move. One insider put it very directly, saying there was a sense of relief around the locker room, that players were glad to move forward without the distractions and that the team simply needed a reset for the sake of its future direction. Another account went even further, describing parts of the roster as genuinely relieved once the transition happened. So when analysts later pointed out that certain free agents were hesitant to commit to Chicago while Angel Reese was still on the roster, it didn't really sound like speculation. It lined up with what people around the team were already suggesting behind the scenes. And that wasn't the only shift either. The Sky also reassigned Reese's former No. 5 jersey to Ricka Jackson, which immediately triggered a wave of reactions online from Reese's supporters. Some even started calling for the number to be retired, a demand that felt out of step considering Reese's short stint in Chicago and the lack of postseason success during her time there. Retiring a jersey is usually reserved for players who deliver championships, deep playoff runs, or a lasting winning legacy. In this case, the RA Sume was 2 seasons seasons without a postseason appearance and a trade that brought back future draft capital. So Chicago assigning that number to Jackson wasn't really a statement of disrespect. It was simply an organization closing a chapter and moving forward without hesitation.
They traded away Angel Reese and then said, we're going in. We're going in. Right here, right now. Had to get her off the team to get these players to come here.
The roster built around Camila Cardoso now looks quicker, more seasoned, and far more stable than anything Chicago fielded during the Angel Reese era. Skylar Diggins, Smith brings structure and control to the offense. Dijanai Carrington gives them elite perimeter defense, and Rickett Jackson alongside Cardoso adds real interior scoring options that can actually convert in big moments. In other words, Chicago didn't just replace Reese, they rebuilt the entire environment around her departure. While Reese was moving on to her second team in just a couple of seasons, Chicago was focused on reshaping the foundation from the ground up. At the same time, Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever were doing what they've been building toward since day one, winning more games, improving year over year, and turning Indiana into a destination where players actually want to sign. Clark and Reese entered the league in the same draft class, which makes the comparison unavoidable. Two players, same timeline, same opportunity window to establish themselves, and within that window, the contrast became pretty clear. Clark's Fever continued to rise, reaching the playoffs for the first time in years, selling out arenas consistently, and attracting talent that had other options across the league. Meanwhile, Reese's time in Chicago ended without a playoff appearance in either season, and the team's record actually declined in year two instead of improving.
Last time they went to the finals was 2015. Okay, you guys made the semis of the East last season. You had to watch from the sideline.
Yeah, it was tough.
Expectations, goals of this season, what you got for me?
I mean, we were trying to win it all last year, and that's certainly what we're trying to do this year. You know, it's a very unique situation. I think there's over 100 players in the league that are free agents. So we really only know about 5 people or 3 people that are going to be on our team next year, but I feel like we have a great...
Lexi Hull, Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, and Sophie Cunningham. That core wasn't something random or accidental. Those players chose Indiana and stayed because the system fit, the basketball made sense. And Caitlin Clark runs an offense that naturally elevates everyone around her in ways that actually translate to wins. Boston gets cleaner, higher, quality looks because of Clark's spacing and gravity. Mitchell thrives attacking off screens created by Clark's shooting threat. Hull locks in defensively knowing the offense won't collapse just because she's focused on her assignment. Cunningham brings toughness and edge within a structure that stays organized. This is a real team, built around a star who cares more about winning than spotlight. And that's why Indiana quietly became a legitimate free agent destination, not because of hype jersey sales or social media numbers, but because the basketball itself is functional, competitive, and appealing to players who want to win. Players didn't choose the Fever for attention. They chose them because the system works. The locker room doesn't spiral into constant drama, and Clark sets a public standard of accountability that raises the expectation for everyone else in the building.
I see a lot of players wanting to go, in this offseason, a lot of players are going to want to go to the Fever. But they're going to have a pick of a lot of free agents that are going to be like, I want to play here.
That sense of accountability ties directly into how both players handle the media spotlight. Caitlin Clark shows up after tough performances, sits at the podium, answers the difficult questions, and doesn't treat reporters like opponents she has to dodge. Whether it's a bad shooting night or a tough loss, she's still there, still speaking, still engaging, still building a consistent presence that casual fans can follow and connect with over time. Angel Reese, on the other hand, has often taken a different approach, skipping pregame media sessions, joking about accepting fines, and sometimes framing uncomfortable questions as personal attacks rather than part of the job. One approach steadily grows a team's visibility and fan base. The other tends to keep the spotlight fixed on the individual story instead of the larger team narrative. Same draft class, same timeline, same 2-year window, and within that span, the contrast is clear. Clark's Indiana Fever continued to win more, improve more, and attract more talent as the seasons progressed.
We're looking forward to watching it for sure. You guys saw that May 9th against the Dallas Wings. That'll be the first time you see Caitlin back in her Indiana Fever jersey, but they're getting ready for training camp. That starts April 19th for her. But guess what? She's not really going to go anywhere. Caitlin
Reese's situation in Chicago, meanwhile, ended with more losses than progress, more instability than growth, and ultimately a trade that sent her to Atlanta in exchange for future assets. Now Atlanta gets its chance to see whether a new environment can unlock something that didn't fully materialize in Chicago. Meanwhile, Indiana enters 2026 with a deeper, more experienced roster and real expectations of a playoff push that no one inside the organization is treating as unrealistic. Angel Reese finished the night shooting just 29%, had a layup sent back by Camila Cardoso, skipped post-game media, and then watched Chicago hand her old jersey number over to Rickea Jackson while multiple quality players joined her former team in a single off-season. That's not just a rough game. That looks like the final chapter of a storyline that's been building the same way for 2 straight years, and ending exactly how it was trending all along. Now the bigger question starts to take over the conversation. How long do you think Reese lasts before the pressure reaches a breaking point? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update. And click the video on the screen. We'll see you in the next one.